Chapter 1, Part 5. The annual Irish Energy Christmas party took place at the Dublin Docklands Hotel, adjacent to their office building, a tradition since they moved in 15 years ago. Will habitually attended this event, which coincided with the December board meeting. Once a grand affair that welcomed families and outsiders with lavish meals and a diverse bar, it had scaled down post the economic crash. Now employees can bring partners, and only wine, beer, and light refreshments were served. Irish Energy, shielded by its dam and wind farm assets, remained profitable despite the Celtic Tiger downturn. Board members participated in the 4 p.m. Christmas presentations, featuring concerts, a chairman's address, and gifts. However, these elites, including King and Will's Uncle Willie, steered clear of the ensuing staff party. To Will, their detachment from employees at the festivity was blatant elitism. Even new board members like his cousin displayed this aloofness. They shied away from mingling, let alone engaging in meaningful dialogue with the workforce. Will favored the genuine spirit of Irish Energy's employees over the high and muddy elites. To him, these elites were mere sycophants, climbing the power ladder with disregard for those beneath them. Over his 15-year tenure, not just as a director but as a project manager for early wind farm projects, he built deep connections with the staff. Despite being away from the day-to-day for nearly 7 years, he remained active in the Employee Social Club, which he had founded. Inspired by his previous job in the U.S., the club aimed to foster camaraderie through shared activities. His Uncle Willie had initially opposed the idea, dismissing it as too American. However, the then majority shareholder, English Energy Corporation, had welcomed Will's fresh perspectives to invigorate the staid atmosphere. Will fondly remembered their professionalism, a stark contrast to King's corrupt entourage that emerged post-English Energy's departure from Ireland. Will approached the bar on the second floor of the Dublin Docklands Hotel's expansive ballroom, where a bartender was ready to assist. "What can I get for you?" the bartender inquired. "Vodka tonic, 2 limes," Will replied, making a change from his usual choice of pints, aiming to kick off his Christmas vacation with enthusiasm, even though it was only 6:30 p.m. He looked around the still sparsely populated ballroom, holding on to his optimism for the night ahead, regardless of the current low turnout. "That will be €10, the bartender informed Will, who was momentarily taken aback, realizing that the open bar only covered wine, beer, and soft drinks. Will handed over a €20 note, thinking to himself, "I suppose it's back to the pints after this." Although he typically favored milder drinks, he resolved to make the most of the free pints, especially after enduring a lengthy and disagreeable boardroom meeting with people he couldn't stand. A voice from behind Will interrupted his contemplation. He turned to find a medium-sized, brown-haired woman with a glass of wine in hand, smirking at him. "Mairead," Will greeted her. "How are you?" He was taken aback by her presence at the party. Mairead, pronounced Ma-Raid, carried one of the traditional Irish names that had gained popularity around the time of her birth. The era of Marys and Colleens had given way to more complex Irish names like Siobhan and Grania. Fortunately, Will knew how to pronounce her name correctly. He and Mairead had started their careers at the same company, although she had left for a period and now seemed to have returned. "I'm doing well. It's quite a surprise to see you back," Mairead replied, her smirk transforming into a warm smile. "It's just as surprising to see you here again," Will remarked. In his early years with the company, he attended several Christmas parties with Mairead, and he had developed a close friendship with her English-born husband, Ed. Will discreetly observed Mairead's attire and was taken aback by how snug her dress appeared. The form-fitting blue dress seemed almost like a second skin on her. He pondered if she was still with Ed, or if she had been affected by the recent infidelity wave in Dublin. Although Mairead was an attractive woman in her early 40s, her choice of dress spoke volumes. Not quite the attire you'd expect from a mother of 2 with a devoted husband. Will mused internally. Mairead inquired, "And where's your missus?" Will chuckled, glancing at his hand with the wedding ring. "Did the ring give it away?" "She's at home packing. We're flying back to the States tomorrow for Christmas." Mairead said, "No, I forgot how I heard you got married." She continued, "New York, right? God, I love New York. Wish I could go with you." Will corrected her, saying, "Actually Boston, but New York was the second obvious choice, if not Chicago." Engaging in small talk with Mairead, Will asked, "How is Ed? Is he here?" "Ed's well. He's home babysitting tonight. It's my night out with the girls," Mairead replied with a big smile, taking a sip of her wine. Will smirked, thinking Mairead seemed to be on the hunt tonight. Her choice of attire was bolder than anything he remembered her wearing before, but he decided he wasn't going to be ensnared in any potential drama. Beyond the allure of alcohol, there was a high chance that someone in the ballroom was indulging in or carrying cocaine. From the heyday of the Celtic Tiger, Will knew that the Irish party scene often went hand in hand with Charlie when cash was abundant. The crowd in the ballroom thickened, particularly around the expansive bar lining the back wall. Never come between an Irishman and free drinks, Will mused, even if the options were limited to wine and beer. This restriction aimed to curb the early inebriation that often marred past parties. It was much the same reasoning behind the scarcity of open bars at Irish weddings. He remembered the chaos at his sister's wedding in Ireland, which had an open bar due to her American husband's tradition. Some guests hadn't lasted past dinner, and others somehow managed to wreck the hotel's piano. Despite the madness, Will fondly recalled it as an unforgettable celebration. A wedding that, thanks to its free-flowing drinks, was still a topic of conversation a decade and a half later. Will continued his conversation with Mairead and said, "Please let Ed know I was asking about him. It's a shame he couldn't be here." Just at that moment, the longtime CEO of Irish Energy walked by Will and Mairead. "So, I heard Dermot formally resigned today," Mairead said, looking over in the direction of the now ex-CEO. Will, never disclosing boardroom confidence but figuring it was now public information, replied, "No, he's on sick leave for the next year, but he will be replaced as the CEO." Will shifted his gaze to the outgoing chief executive, who was taking a leave of absence for mental health reasons. It had come as a surprise to Will when he was made aware of this situation at the board meeting earlier that day. Mairead lowered her voice even further and leaned in closer. "Have you heard any rumors or gossip about what might have triggered this sudden leave?" Will shook his head. "Not a word. It's all been very hush-hush, but I'm sure the grapevine will start buzzing soon." As they continued to chat, both Will and Mairead couldn't help but wonder about the mystery surrounding Dermot's sudden departure and what might be happening behind the scenes at Irish Energy. Mairead glanced around as well, before responding in a hushed tone. "Honestly, Will, there was no obvious signs. Dermot always seemed like the guy who had it all together. But over the past few months, things just started to change. He became more withdrawn, missed work, and the last time I saw him at the office, he looked like he hadn't slept in days." Will frowned, his curiosity piqued. "That's strange. Did anyone in the company have a clue about what might have been bothering him?" Mairead shook her head. "Not that I know of. It's all a bit of a mystery. People have been talking, of course, but nobody really knows what's going on." Will took a sip of his drink, deep in thought. "Well, I hope he gets the help he needs. Mental health issues can be tough." Mairead nodded in agreement. "Absolutely. It's just sad to see someone like Dermot going through this." As they continued to discuss Dermot's situation, Will couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than met the eye. Dermot O'Riordan, the 52-year-old CEO of Irish Energy, had held the position for the last 3 years. Prior to that, he served as the company's CFO and secretary for 5 years and was its longtime bookkeeper. A true Irish Energy stalwart, Dermot joined right after finishing his apprenticeship at a top Irish accountancy firm. Having been with the company even before Will's 2005 arrival, He was known as a rising star with a young family and a keen aptitude for numbers. However, Will felt he wasn't cut out to be CEO. In recent months, Dermot seemed to have undergone a severe mental shift, puzzling to Will, who remembered his earlier amicable and competent nature. Dermot's rise to the top came after two preceding CEOs were sidelined due to internal manipulations by Willie, King, and their associates. These former leaders realized they weren't the true decision makers, but merely figureheads for King and Willie's agenda. Such CEOs were set up for a thankless task, never credited for successes but always blamed for failures. This was emblematic of the facade-oriented nature of Irish business, where appearances overshadowed substance. Many, like the former CEOs, found themselves professionally, morally, and mentally compromised in such an environment. "Does anyone know what happened to him?" Will inquired, leaning in closer to Mairead, who appeared more than willing to share the gossip, especially as the wine flowed. Mairead responded with a secretive smile and a wink. No one really likes to talk about it. "I can see why you'd say that," Will replied, recognizing Mairead's eagerness to delve into the juicy details. Dermot's recent breakdown and altered appearance had certainly raised eyebrows. Despite the rumors of his episodes, he looked entirely composed as he mingled in the ballroom, engaging warmly with colleagues, laughing wholeheartedly, and embracing those around him. Mairead cautiously glanced around before leaning in to whisper, "Promise this stays between us," but there were times he was found crying in his car during the day. Sometimes he'd leave for lunch and not come back. In recent months, his appearance became sporadic, even if he had a full day of appointments. About a month ago, he unexpectedly broke down during a management meeting. Everyone was alarmed, and as you probably noticed, his long gray beard is new, and his unkempt appearance has become the norm. "Really?" Will expressed his surprise at the severity of the situation. Mairead nodded knowingly. "Your uncle and the chairman have practically taken over the management meetings," she informed him, having first-hand knowledge since her desk was located near the executive offices and the conference room. Curious, Will inquired further, "Where was Dermot during all of this?" "No one knows," Mairead replied. "This is the first time we've seen him in a few weeks." Will responded. In the last board meeting, they briefly mentioned his laptop accidentally falling out of a window and damaging a car below. I only read the minutes since I didn't attend, but it seemed everything was settled with the insurers and solicitors. Mairead quickly countered. It wasn't an accident. He deliberately threw the laptop out, damaging a car and scattering glass everywhere. The guards, police, came and questioned a few people. The car owner, Angela, from accounting, got her vehicle repaired, and rumor has it was paid a substantial amount to keep quiet. Your uncle, the chairman, and others spoke to anyone involved, urging them to stay silent. I bet they were also paid in some way. Will replied as he is about to take a drink of his beer. Now that makes more sense. They definitely got something, for sure. The board minutes certainly didn't reflect this bit of gossip. Are you around later? Mairead, noticing Will's shift in demeanor, replied with a flirtatious tone. Of course, I'll be around. We're thinking of heading to a pub nearby after. You're welcome to join and catch up more. And congratulations on your marriage, by the way, she added with a suggestive smile, maybe trying to convey a different kind of invitation. Will responded with a polite nod, saying, "Sure, I might catch up later." However, he had no intention of pursuing Mairead's implied invitation, and planned to steer clear of her for the rest of the evening. Nonetheless, he was satisfied with the valuable information she had shared. Exiting the main ballroom, Will exchanged pleasantries with a few acquaintances before descending to the lower ground bathrooms. He figured it would be a secluded spot away from the party where he could process the shocking revelations. A beer at the hotel bar seemed like a good idea to clear his mind before rejoining the festivities.